Hi, this is cult filmmaker David DeCoteau, and I'm moderating today's commentary with the legendary cult filmmaker Fred Olen Ray. Hi, Fred.
Good. Hi, David. How are you today?
I'm fantastic.
Great.
Well, I was lucky enough to see this movie on its original VHS release, and I absolutely loved it. I like how the tone is set with this thing and this opening, and it's so serious, but Don Wildsmith is so hilarious in it. But one of the funniest things about this scene to me is the voiceover for the person who's doing the interviewing.
Right. It's Lucky Ewing Brown, who had appeared in what were the movies? Giant from the Unknown, Astounding She-Monster. He was one of the Little Rascals.
Amazing.
He worked with Al Adamson, and he owned the studio
That you shot the scene in. Okay, great. And Dawn was, that's obviously a wig on Dawn, and she was in almost every movie you made back then.
Well, we were, I believe, married at this point. We were married, and so it seemed like a natural to put her in because she was a great actress. But she didn't want to play one of the regular hookers. She didn't want to. She wanted to take her clothes off and wield a chainsaw. So she wanted to play this kind of role, which she had played in Beverly Hills Vamp.
And she's great. She's great as this. She's funny. She's almost a character actress. Oh, this is so clever. Now, Fred, Hollywood chainsaw hookers. Did you bolt up one morning and said, "Chainsaw hookers, chainsaw hookers, chainsaw cult, I need to make this movie"? Or is this something that came to you from a friend, or how did this come about?
You know, it was a case of having to come up with an idea for a movie where if somebody had some money, they wanted to make a license of a film for us.
Okay.
But we needed a brand new movie, and we threw some different ideas at the company, and this was the one that kind of stuck.
Okay.
And it worked because I've done a handful of horror films. I haven't done a lot of them, but I've done a handful of them. But I've always enjoyed comedy more. And the main thing about this movie, and if you look at Beverly Hills Vamp, they are very similar films. People don't realize it unless you think about it. But when I first moved here to California, my brother and I, we were walking down Hollywood Boulevard for the first time, and we saw these newspapers, free newspapers, and it was nothing but ads for girls who were going to come to your house. I remember those papers?
Uh-huh.
Just trashy papers for escorts and stuff. And I looked at my brother, because we were from Florida, we were pretty innocent. I said, this is insane. I said, how do you know when you call one of these girls over that you're not going to get some kind of chainsaw-wielding maniac? I said, you're not going to tell your friends you're having her over. You're going to hide it from the neighbors so nobody knows. I said, you don't know who you're letting in your house, the terrible things that might happen to you.
And it might not even be a girl.
that happens probably more than the chainsaw-wielding maniac part. But this was really a message, a safe sex message. That's what I see this film as. It's just be careful. Be careful out there, guys.
Be careful out there.
Who you invite over. Who you invite over.
And whose idea was it to make it about a chainsaw cult?
Well, you have to, when you start thinking about this stuff, you gotta, come up with a plot. There has to be about something. Every film has to be about something. And so, knowing that we had very little time and very little money, it made some sense for us to come up with a storyline that we could work around the locations and stuff that we knew we had.
Ah, okay.
So and why would hookers saw guys up with chainsaws? I mean, the whole concept is fairly ridiculous. So we thought, well, why not take it to the max? They worship Black & Decker.
Great. I recognize a lot of familiar names on this main title sequence, but let's just very quickly start with the music. Is this an entirely original musical score?
It was. In fact, the whole film was originally scored by a fellow named Michael Perelstein, and when we got the score, I liked some of it, and some of it I thought could be different or better. So I went and got a bunch of rock and roll songs from different artists and stuff, and I used those in the film in places where I didn't feel like the score was exactly what I was looking for. I know right there in the one of the associates was Nancy Pololian, who was my assistant, and she had been an assistant at Trans World Entertainment. They had let her go, and she was over at a restaurant as a hostess, and I said, look, why don't you come help me make this film? So she came and she worked for me on this film and maybe a couple others, and she went on to produce Antoine Fisher and Dude, Where's My Car?
I know, she's a big shot now.
And Corey Kaplan, who has won so many Emmys for being the production designer for The X-Files and so many other shows. There's some people on this movie who did very well by themselves. Now you can see there's a scratch right there. And I'm going to tell you that I believe HBO borrowed our negative at one point to make their own transfer, and I believe that when it came back, reel number 1 of the negative was missing. We've never been able to find it, and reel number 1, the first 7 minutes of this, has been created from 35 millimeter answer print.
Okay.
And we did a lot of restoration. There's certain things that we just couldn't handle. There's a few scratches that we just couldn't get out. But the first 7 minutes of this is from the 35 answer print, and then the balance of it is from the original camera negatives.
Nice. So you did a 2K scan of all this
material. A 2K scan of all this material, and we worked very hard on restoring this first 7 minutes. But here and there are a few scratches that to fix them would just be more money than the film could ever generate on the Blu-ray.
What we're seeing right now is the enchanting and lovely Michelle Bauer and the enchanting Jimmy Williams. We've talked about how you met Michelle many times, but what was this? Your 3rd or 4th movie with Michelle?
Yeah. You know, this came. I'm trying to think when this film was actually made in the scheme of things, but I think it was made after Phantom Empire, which would make it probably 1987, 88, somewhere in there.
87 probably.
Okay, and Michelle and I started working about 1984, so we would have done Armed Response, and she would have been in Cyclone, and she would have maybe been in Phantom Empire already, and she'd have probably been in a handful of things for us.
Well, she's amazing in this, and she's not only is she a sexy woman, but she's a terrific comedian, and you've gone on to work with her probably another 30 or 40 times.
Maybe. Yeah. She's got incredible comedic timing, and she's just stunning.
Absolutely.
You know, she's just stunning in this.
Now, the bartender here is Dookie Flyswatter from the rock band
Haunted
Garage. His real name is Michael Sonny.
That's correct.
He was a screenwriter for you as well, right?
He wrote Star Slammer, and he wrote Commando Squad for us. And he's also been an actor in a bunch of our stuff, and he appears in films like Cyclone and some of the other Phantom Empire. He loses his head at the beginning of Phantom Empire. Somebody pulls it off, I think.
Well, I hired him right after Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers to play the voice of the Imp in Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama, and then right after that, I hired him for Nightmare Sisters, where we used that head that you're talking about for Nightmare Sisters as well.
Well, you know, it's kind of like a guy in the Western movies. If you have your own horse, you'll work a lot. In a horror film, if you have your own decapitated head, there's a certain amount of jobs out there for you.
And I also see Gunnar Hansen as a little cutaway there. Now, I have to admit, getting Gunnar Hansen to be in your Chainsaw movie was quite the coup. How did you meet Gunnar Hansen, star of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
He was friends with Don Jackson, who I knew, and had been in Don's movie The Demon Lover. And so he was able to put me in touch with Gunnar, who lived in Mount Desert Island, Maine. He was a poet. He had a book called Bear Dancing on a Hill that I had. And it just seemed like a natural thing to do to bring him out. He worked for just a couple days. I mean, the movie was only made in a couple days. And so at that point of the motel, that's where we've gone to the original camera negative. So from here on out, we're in the camera original camera negs.
Great.
So Gunnar seemed you got Chainsaw movie, you got the original Leatherface,
Haven't seen anything like that.
and it seemed like an advertising ploy. You had Linnea Quigley, another advertising ploy, and Michelle, who is a super talent. Hadn't really the Scream Queen phenomena. People talk about Scream Queen movies. The Scream Queen phenomena was only being created at this very moment.
Right.
It didn't exist. Michelle was not a big star. Her name on a poster didn't change the way the world spun. The movies that they call Scream Queen movies were actually being defined with this film and Slimeball Bolorama.
Must be the way
And that's a certain type of film, because Creepazoids, while it has Linnea, isn't really a Scream Queen movie, because Scream Queen movie, the girls lead the way.
Exactly.
The girls, like Nightmare Sisters, the girls lead the way, the girls are the stars, and the movie is about them. And they're usually the ones who are causing the most trouble, not the ones in trouble. So this was the film, I think, that did put Michelle on the fanboy map.
Oh, yeah. Well, that striking photograph of her on the cover was taken. Was it a year before the movie was made, or a month, or how?
No, it was maybe a few months before we go, because I would have had the deal in place before I would have put out any money to pay for a photo shoot, because I paid for that shoot.
I got you. Okay.
And
photograph was taken by Dan Golden, correct?
yes,
director.
we hired Dan who did our stills normally. We hired Dan to shoot it, and we hired Michelle to come out and pose for it. And it's one of those lucky incidences where it was something you did in advance, paid off, and you didn't end up with a bunch of photos for a movie you never made.
Right, exactly. And here's Michelle Bauer, God bless her. We're lucky directors to have girls like this around, Fred.
You know, they made it easy, and as she pointed out, because we were always teasing her about the fact that she's pointing at this ring, because we're playing this Elvis song called Won't You Wear Your Ring Around My Neck. Even though we told her that that song would not be in the movie, just to dance to it, she kind of kept acting it out. And she was very cute, but she did point out the fact that film was so precious and money was so low that there was no retaking this. So we had to leave it in, you know.
Right.
It's this is the scene for me that is what this movie's all about. This is the one scene. In fact, I don't know if the movie ever rises to this level again. That she's covering the Elvis, and then she's wearing a shower cap, and she offers the guy who's her upcoming victim. She offers him a shower cap. You want one?
Now, the actor here, Jimmy Williams, is an old friend. He used to work at Movie Tech Studios. Is he the guy who actually built the sets for this?
He might have, or him and a couple other guys. Jimmy had formerly been like a bodybuilder, Mr. USA.
Oh, really?
Kind of guy, and he was in some films for us, like Terminal Force and Mom's Out of Sight. You know, usually he kind of plays a bully or a truck driver or something like that. Him and I were in Deep Space. We were the guys unloading the truck with the alien pod on it at from when Tony Isley was going to inspect it.
Right.
This you see her. She says, "You just wait right here," you know, and you hear this buzzing, whirring sound. You kind of wonder what it is, but I mean, in a movie like this, you got to kind of know. But you know, when you go to Michelle, she didn't just wield that chainsaw. I mean, she wielded that chainsaw with malice. I mean, the looks on her face. Sometimes I would stop some of the freeze frames and stuff when I was working on this, and look at her here. Look at that look. You know, I mean, that's pretty diabolic.
She is so funny and so adorable. Because I think you may have introduced me to her. I think, Fred. I can't remember.
Perhaps.
And I've worked with her quite a bit since then, and I absolutely adore her. She's still friends of the family.
Yes.
And she was at your birthday party, so she's a sweetheart. She and her lovely husband Don.
Right. And look at that. Look at that look on her face. That's incredible. And that's a real saw going there too. She's completely butt naked, and that saw blade's just a going.
Oh my God.
I know you probably wouldn't do that in this day and age, but this was back in 1987, and you know
this is great. This is great.
And we just threw everything we had at them.
Yeah.
You know, it's a Hudson sprayer, and there's cups of blood, and then there's little body parts, and they're all from Hollywood Toys. We had no makeup effects budget on the show.
Right.
All the fingers, and this hand right here, even that's me under there. Pulling that up, but it makes for a very funny scene. It's a bloody movie, but it's a comedy. Let's get down to it. Despite what the British government might say about us, this movie was a comedy.
Now, this scene was shot. There's Gunner. This scene was shot in Movie Tech Studios in Hollywood. But the bar scene prior to it, where was that shot?
It was really the West Side Bar. It was owned by Nick Marino.
Oh, that's right, the West Side, of course.
And
I shot Lady Avenger there. I like that. I remember when he owned
we shot part of Terminal Force. That's where Troy Donahue had his bar.
Right.
And somewhere in that same era.
Right. Now this is all Movie Tech Studios.
No, this is Transworld Entertainment. Part of the deal of working on this movie Moon and Scorpio with them, which they were underpaying me for, was that I could have their camera equipment on the weekends, and I could film in their offices.
Okay.
So these offices and the police station and stuff are all in the old Transworld Entertainment building at Wilcox and Sunset. Now CNN.
Now CNN. Oh, that's right. The old Canon used to be there. 64,
same offices,
64. Yeah.
Same offices that Canon was in.
This is the Hollywood Police Station, if I'm not
mistaken.
mistaken.
It is. Gary Graver shot this. We used to give guys a list of the different shots we needed and just and tell them, just go away, here's some money, come back later with the shots.
Exactly.
That's the one he got out of the pickup truck, put the sticks in the back of his pickup truck on the other side of the wall, and shot over the wall into the police station. Yeah. Well, he'd done this before.
Yes, I think Gary Graver. But Gary Graver did not shoot this film. This film was shot by a young man named Scott Ressler.
Yeah, 95% of this is Scott Ressler, and 5% of it, I guess, is Gary. Scott had worked for us as Paul Elliott's assistant cameraman on a lot of our early features. And Gary wasn't available in the early going of this, so we gave Scott a chance to step up. And looking at the 2K scan, I've never seen it this clean looking before.
It's beautiful.
And I'm amazed at how sharp it is.
Yeah.
You know, I would have thought it would have been, because it's always looked a little, low res, soft resolution to me, but it really isn't. It was really razor sharp when you come off of that negative.
Well, yeah, absolutely. This is shot in 35 millimeter, probably Fuji film.
Fuji seems like the right choice because it's got a brownish. Fuji's warm on the warm side. There's probably several different layers of Fuji stock going on here. Even from shot to shot, the grain might change or something. And so I think the different short-ends, you kind of took what you could get.
Right.
And you went with the lowest price you could. And you were buying recans, if people know what a recan is. A recan is if you've loaded the magazines for the day and you get to the end of the day and the film magazine didn't go on the camera, they take it out of the magazine and they put it back into the can. And it's never been run through the camera, but it has been handled, and it's called a recan. But you can get a 1,000-foot recan or a 400-foot recan. It's the whole roll.
For about half the price of new.
Right. And a short end is just what's left over in the mag when they break it off. And it could be 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet, depending on the mag size.
Or 100 feet on some of my movies.
And it's been in the camera, and it's been broken off, and it's been recanned, and that's even cheaper.
Exactly. And that's a real pain in the ass.
And you never know. You never know if it's really 100 feet or 200 feet or 300 feet.
They weigh
people
it.
Lie, people lie.
Remember the resellers would weigh it, and based on the weight, they could tell how much footage was. Because the camera assistants always lied, because it was the camera assistants that would sell this film stock on the black market to these brokers, and they would get the money. And usually,
sometimes somebody would snip test it. They'd open the can, they'd snip off a little bit of it, and have a lab process it to make sure that it hadn't been in the sun, that it wasn't fogged in any way, and you pay a little bit more for tested ends.
Right.
Now,
who is this actor here?
The guy's name is Dennis Mooney. He is a fellow that I probably got right through Drama Log, which is how I cast this thing. But after he was in this, I think Nick Marino used him also in Death House with John Saxon.
Oh, okay.
And Dennis made a few. Some of these people made a few movies. Esther Elise was in a couple of films after this because they were in this.
Good.
This film got a certain amount of attention in its time, and it played on HBO and Showtime, and it did its thing.
Now, we probably covered a lot of what I'm about to ask in the documentary that's included on this Blu-ray release of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, but this is the Fred Olen Ray debut of Mr. Jay Richardson, who became one of your stock players on countless movies. Quickly, how did you meet Jay?
Jay came in through the Drama Log advertisement, and he just came in and interviewed there at Raleigh Studios, where we used to share an office with George Edwards, who had made Queen of Blood and Frogs and movies like How Awful About Alan. And Jay came in, he wanted to get, I think he might have been going through a divorce, and he wanted to get back into acting. And he just was so much like the character, it was very difficult not to give him the part.
Right.
He was just so much like Jack Chandler. I mean, it was perfect. I don't think the movie would be the movie it is if it wasn't for Jay, because he is basically the glue that holds this whole movie together.
Exactly.
So it worked out very well. Now these two guys, I think the guy on the left was the boyfriend of Nancy Pololian, whose head you probably see going back there, and the other guy on the right was in Biohazard for me, and I believe he played the villain in the second Puppet Master movie that Dave Allen directed. He was wrapped in cloth.
Steve Wells.
Steve Wells. That's Steve Wells.
Oh my God. Anyways,
and he did a nice job here. I mean, I've heard other different things in different stories and from different places, but that's who that is.
And this was all shot at Transworld?
This is shot at Transworld Entertainment. Yeah, I think the one kid's name is Charles O'Hare, if I'm not mistaken. So
this is great. Now, this movie was shot over a period of 5 days?
Yeah, it was shot over 2 weekends. And then there was a pickup night where we rented a pink Cadillac and drove around Hollywood that Gary Graver shot. This is part of that.
Oh, okay.
And when you see Linnea in these scenes in the Cadillac, her hair is completely different. It's all frizzy and kinky compared to the way it is in the rest of the film. This was a lucky break. There was a hotel right on Wilcox that had the A and the L burned out. Hot. Just says hot. And we just went down there and shot it. I think Gary probably did that. We did that as well. That's one of those shots you kind of steal. Now, this was one of the movie tech sets. In fact, it's the same set that Michelle saw Jimmy up in.
Oh, you just redressed it?
We just redressed it. It also turns out to be the same room that Jay's tied up in later. And it might be something else that comes up that I'll let you know if I see it.
Okay.
Well, we had two sides of the stage, and just like we made the tomb in the same studio, and we did the same thing then. We had two sets on two sides of the room, and we just kept rebuilding and redressing one while we filmed on the other one. You'd have to be quiet when the camera's rolling, and then you'd start painting and hammering again. And we just bounced back and forth between two sets on the same stage.
Right. Amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, Movie Tech Studios was located right in Hollywood on Seward and Willoughby, and a number of low-budget productions shot there, and it was owned by the actor who did the voiceover at the beginning, Lucky Brown. You shot quite a few films there. As a matter of fact, you edited this movie at Movie Tech, and you also did the sound mix there, correct?
Yeah, we did a lot. We did a lot of this film there because the budget was just so low. I think we started going to this studio when we filmed The Tomb. We shot part of Armed Response here. We even shot part of Deep Space there. I mean, we shot a lot of Phantom Empire and Commando Squad. There's a lot of things that you can do in what's basically an empty concrete room.
Exactly. Exactly. I did body burns in there.
I didn't try that, but I did drive a car through in Armed Response. The car comes through the bar at the end of the movie with Michael Berryman driving it. That was a set that we did at Movie Tech, and we had opened up the big doors and simply drove the car into the studio and right through the wall of the set. The fact that this has sets at all, I think, is the amazing thing. Who could have built sets for this budget?
Was that your house?
That was my house. This was the Friday night. We picked the equipment up on a Friday afternoon, and I didn't want to let any moss grow under my feet, so I started filming immediately that Friday night to get a half-a-day shoot out of this. And
now this is
my house, and this was the only scene that we shot that Friday night, was this sequence with Fox Harris.
Who's credited as Jerry Fox in this film?
Well, this was a non-SAG movie.
Okay.
It was a non-union movie, and Jerry was a guy who was in movies for Alex Cox, like Repo Man, Sid and Nancy, Straight to Hell. And of course, my favorite, Forbidden World, where they take his tumor out of his stomach and feed it to the monster
I know.
To kill it at the end.
He's great in that movie. He's great in this movie.
Yeah, and Fox was a friend of Dawn's, and so we used him as much as we could, whenever it worked out. And he was very good in this.
He's hilarious in this. This is great.
Here's Esther Elise, and I'm guessing I must have met Esther Elise through Dramalog because I'd never seen her before, and I don't believe I've seen her since. I looked around to see if I could locate her when we were making this edition, and I've had no luck in locating Esther Elise. I hope that she married some rich guy and has a different last name now and is very happy.
And is better off than Fox Harris, who's no longer with us, who'd passed away, I think, might have from cancer possibly, I'm not sure. But because he was a heavy smoker, and from what I understand.
Yes.
And a troubled man, but everybody loved Fox Harris. I got to meet him once, and he was a very nice guy. I think he's in Cyclone. Isn't he? Did you put him in Cyclone for one scene? I think he had one scene.
He might be. He's in Armed Response. I know that. He always plays a quirky character. He always likes to play something quirky. And I know in Cafe Flesh, those people made a play, a theatrical production. It was called Jackie Charge. And Fox was literally the star of this theater production.
Right.
It was I saw it, and it was an amazing show.
Now, you were officed up at George Edwards. You were sharing an office with George Edwards at the Raleigh Studios lot, which used to be the Producer Studios lot, where they shot such films as Roger Corman's The Pit and the Pendulum, and also movies like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. How did you stumble into that office? I mean, that's a great location.
Well, Gary Graver introduced me, or someone else, or it was the other way around. Maybe it was George Edwards that maybe set me on to Gary Graver. George Edwards was Curtis Harrington's producing partner. And someone introduced me to George, and George just loved me. He called me the boy genius. The boy genius. It's Fred Ray, the boy genius. And George had a 2-room office, and he didn't have any action going on, so he needed to rent out that front room. So he offered it to me for $200. And anybody who came to see George had to walk right through my room, because you came in the front door, there I was. You walked through my room into the next door, and that was George's office. And so people were constantly going through my room. And all I had in there was one phone with call waiting. It was great to be on that lot because we were right next to Herman Cohen.
Oh my God!
And I like to tell people that Kevin Costner was our gardener who came in and watered our plants.
Because that's the truth.
That is the truth. But we were there, and we'd all hover around one telephone with call waiting, and that's how this and Phantom Empire and a couple other films were produced. People sitting on the floor.
That's
in a
amazing.
little teeny room at Raleigh Studios, but it was a great time. I wish I still had that
And that's a great
office.
shot. Go Esther.
I know. Yeah, you got to know where to put that camera, Dave.
Exactly. You're pretty good at that stuff, Fred.
Well, I know what I like.
I ended up hiring Scott Ressler, the cinematographer, on this, on my film Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama, because he had just done a 5-day wonder for Fred Olen Ray, and I said, what's good enough for Fred Olen Ray is good enough for me. You're hired. I had not seen a single frame of his work, and I hired him to shoot Sorority Babes. And he's a really sweet guy, and he's doing great. He works a lot nowadays. So,
Well, I remember when Nick Marino went to make his horror movie, Terror Night, he hired a bunch of people on the basis of the fact that they had worked for me. Not that I had recommended them, but that they worked. And then when they went in and did a bad job, he was mad at me.
I know.
I said, what are you mad at me for? He goes, it was because I said, just because I hired somebody doesn't mean that I would recommend them again, or you didn't ask me what I thought, so there's a danger in that.
Yeah. Well, I was really, really happy with Scott. I thought he did a great job on my
Well, this
movie.
just looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And when
We probably hardly had no equipment. There were no gripper electric trucks on this movie. Get real. It's whatever could fit in your car.
I know, and it's it's a 35 millimeter feature. There's a lot of, especially there's probably Fuji 500, I would imagine, but even the 250 still needed a certain amount of lights. This took some time and effort, and I think Scott did a great job. I think this is.
Well, I mean, look at Esther's. She just looks gorgeous there.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And this, of course, you film in your house, and you don't have time to clean up and all that stuff. You see the Maltese Falcon sitting on the back thing there, and I think there's even a VHS box for Armed Response on that fireplace back there. This was at Camrose and Hightower. Jeffrey Combs was our next door neighbor. Him and Edie McClurg.
This is right by the Hollywood Bowl.
Yes, it's at the corner of Camrose and Hightower, right off of Highland near the Bowl. And Edie McClurg used to give me shit all the time because she said I didn't bring my garbage cans off the street fast enough to suit her.
Oh.
But Jeff Combs lived about 3 doors down.
Oh, okay.
He was on Hightower. This was actually a duplex. It wasn't even a house. It was a duplex. But nobody said anything. I was in there whirling away with a chainsaw one night on a Friday night.
Now explain to us how you did the chainsaw, because there's obviously you did some tricky stuff with the chain, and how did you do it?
Well, being as low budget as we were, you would think we would have 2 saws of the same brand, but no, we had only 1 saw. So we would put the chain on it and then run it. Then we'd have to take the chain off. We'd put a frayed rope, like a hemp rope, in place of the chain, and we frayed it. So it had little fibers everywhere. So when the saw vibrated, the rope would blur. And it would have blur, and it kind of looked like the blade was spinning. Some of the shots, of course, you see the blade stop, so you know it's the real blade on there. Whenever we plan for you to see the blade come to a stop.
Right.
But it took a long time to get that blade on and off of there, and we would have been much smarter to have rented 2 chainsaws that were alike and just kept one with a blade on it and one with a blade off. But such is low budget filmmaking.
Right. Well, I tell you, it's effective because it's amazing with the sound design and everything. It works. It absolutely works.
Now, whenever you're shooting a night scene like this, there's a little light kit Gary would put on the dash. But you got to go down a street that has other things going on in the background. This was, I believe, Melrose.
Right.
That area of Melrose where they have all the hip shops and stuff.
All
because
that neon, yes.
They're all lit up and stuff, and so you don't just have black outside the window.
Right.
And but you're doing the thing here that you're never supposed to do, and that's you're having to act and drive the car for real while you're filming.
With a light on his face, plugged into the cigarette light.
shining into his eyes.
Exactly.
You have this small light.
Now this looks great. This is Hollywood Boulevard.
Yes.
Now what is that? Is that what
That's
I think
the
it
west
is?
side.
Okay, that's the west side.
Now here's my entire crew. We have no extras on here. Chris Ray. He's
Yep.
got to be
In a bar.
He's got to be 10 years old. He was born in 1977. This is 87. He's 10 years old. He's had a martini and a cigarette in his hand. And there's my assistant director, Tony Brewster.
And I think at the very end is Tony Malinowski, the film
Tony
editor.
Malinowski from Alien Factor. Tony DeSalvo looks like. Ted Tunney. Dan Golden, who was also director. And the one kid...
Who's the one kid?
I
Cute.
don't recognize him. Keep it in your pants, David.
Okay.
All right.
And
And then he's wearing the apron that says Happy St. Patrick's Day on it. I don't know. You know, this is one of those movies where you could do anything you wanted. Nobody could tell you no.
Exactly.
And if something struck me funny or weird, I mean, we would just do it. Like those stuffed animals there. There's pink bears and stuff. And we would just do anything we wanted.
Well, you probably didn't even see the footage until the film was finished, right? Or did you process it the weekend after the first weekend?
You know, I probably had an account at United Color Lab, so I probably did get to see my dailies, you know, because I wouldn't have to have paid for them right then.
I got you. Okay.
But, you know, these were cut on the old moviolas.
Right.
You know, the old upright moviola, which is nothing like what people work with today.
Exactly. And your lab was right across the street from Movie Tech Studios.
It was. It was. And they were, was it Jack Wanamaker? Was that his name?
Jack Wanamaker. That's exactly
He
it.
was very independent film friendly. He was a guy
Yes.
who wanted to see young people and stuff succeed. And another guy who's not with us anymore.
Yeah.
I've lived to that age where a lot of, you can say that about a lot of people you've worked with.
Exactly. Now you edited the film here. You didn't edit it down the street at Herb Strock's editing facility, did you?
No, Herbert L. Strock was a guy, we had an editing facility in there for Biohazard.
Okay.
And Herb was a guy who kind of mentored me a little bit when I came into town and gave me advice on getting coverage and, you know, because I wanted to be a director. But I hadn't really done much of it. And whatever I had done, I'd done on my own without any guidance. So it was however I wanted to do it. Herb was a guy who was kind of a grouch, but he was very straightforward. He'd made Teenage Frankenstein and Blood of Dracula, and he'd made some great little AIP movies, and he was very meat and potatoes about how coverage should be done. And God bless him. He was friends of ours until he passed. Over on the right-hand side is Jesse Long. That's
Jesse
my script
Long.
supervisor.
That's right.
The girl over to the other side there, I think, was the wardrobe assistant.
And the girl on the stage is Linnea Quigley.
That is Linnea Quigley. I'd recognize those butt cheeks anyway.
I know. Amazing.
Now, this is a beautiful shot, too, of
Oh,
Michelle.
yeah.
She looks over and she says, Jack, I'm going to fuck your brains out. And it was like a threat. It was a threat.
That's Jesse back there. That's so funny. I met Jesse on your movie Cyclone, and I used him as my script supervisor from that point forward. He worked with me all the way through the Puppet Masters and everything. I basically, anybody you hired, if they weren't working for you, I tried to hire.
Well, Jesse Long was a good catch.
He's the best script supervisor in the business.
He was, and a fine fellow too. And it was very funny because he was always very quiet, and he never hardly ever said anything. But I remember we were on this camera car on Cyclone, and we were like, you know how you hang onto the speed rails during the chases, and all of a sudden Jesse got cut loose with a blue joke, and everybody just stopped and turned, and we're like, what? So he'd never said anything. It was like a guy who'd never said anything. And all of a sudden he makes some kind of risque gag.
Linnea, now she shot this right after I worked with her on Creepazoids, I think.
It must have been very close because I know that I asked you about helping me get in contact with
Yeah,
her.
because you had come to the screening of Creepazoids at Photo Counter, and you liked the movie, and maybe that's where you saw her, and I had met her years prior to that. I was a production assistant on a short film, and that's how I met her, and she and I became very, very close. And we were business partners for a long time. I still talk to her to this day. She lives in Florida, and she's probably moving back to LA, but she still looks this great. Her body has not changed. Amazing body. She's so sexy, and she's so easy to work with, and she knew all of her lines, and she was just a real pro, and she made several hundred movies.
Well, she was picking up steam about this time,
Right.
probably off of Creepazoids. She was making that transition from being sort of an oddity in Return of the Living Dead to being a real horror star.
Right.
Where she was starting to be featured as the de facto, name
Right.
in a film.
Right.
And this film, again, I think also propelled her career like Michelle's. It pushed them a little bit further.
Right.
Because then after this film, all you see tons and tons of photos of Linnea, and she's holding a chainsaw. That tells you everything you need to know about whatever the impact of this movie had.
Exactly. And she could barely hold it. Well, we'll get to that when we get to it. But
She was a wispy little thing.
Scott, look how beautiful this movie looks. Because, back in those days, we used to take the cut negative or sometimes an answer print, not even a Locon, and we used to transfer on a telecine to 1 inch. Remember that? 1 inch. And it was never framed right. It was always kind of, and you never had enough time because they always charge you by the hour. And it wasn't hour of running time. It was hour of doing scene-to-scene color correction.
Right.
And it was, oh my God, it would take forever. And I couldn't get them done. I couldn't afford more than 4 or 5 hours. So I would have to just compromise and say, just go with the one light, go with the one light, go with the one light.
Right, and the work print that you worked off of was the cheapest thing they could possibly produce to give you.
Yes, exactly.
It was not a quality print. Sometimes they were even black and white when you got to the mixing stage. It would be a black and white dupe that you actually mixed from.
The dirty dupe, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then of course they'd make you an answer print, and the answer print would be kind of brownish and Fuji looking. You never actually got to see
how good the work was.
As sharp as this. But now we can rectify all that.
Yeah, exactly. This is gorgeous.
Well, this makes me excited to transfer Phantom Empire and Witch Academy and Evil Tunes and some of the others, Angel Eyes.
This is the debut launch of the Blu-ray line at retromedia.org and retromedia.tv, and you couldn't have picked a better movie because this one is really the one, with all due respect, Fred, that people say, "Oh, you directed Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama." A lot of people know about Hollywood Chainsaw Hooker. It was the number 4B movie in Maxim magazine. This one you will not be able to shake this movie.
No, I think there are people out there who think I actually haven't worked since I made this. I keep trying to remind people that I make about 4 films a year right now. They're just not seeing them. Not that they're not out there, but
well, it's just when you're working, when you like to work, you work in all genres, and you and I like to work, and if it's a Christmas movie one week and a horror movie the next and a sci-fi movie that following week, that's what you do.
This is a business, and you kind of have to go where the paycheck is.
Exactly.
You can't sit back and wait for the next low-budget horror film to come along, or you'd have to get a different job and
exactly.
Be waiting tables like some of the actors
that
are out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to be very mercurial and kind of flow where they need you.
Mm-hmm. And storytellers are storytellers, whether it's horror, family, science fiction, action.
I used to say that. I said, you know what? You're still a plumber. Some days you're plumbing in Beverly Hills, some days you're plumbing in Van Nuys, but you're still a plumber.
Exactly. Now, who is this actress?
This girl is a girl named Trisha Brown, and she had a company called California Catfight Wrestling or something like that. Wildcats. And she did videos of apartment wrestling. And that's what Michelle was kind of doing when we first met her. She was doing wrestling videos and stuff. And Trisha had, I think it was called California.
Was it mud wrestling or just regular wrestling?
No. They just a girl would come in the apartment and say, you've been cheating on my man. And then they start pulling until their clothes came off. And they'd wrestle. They actually, no sex involved. They just wrestle around until one girl submits.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and there was a market for that. And I remember she was also in Phantom Empire. She was one of the cave girls that wrestles Michelle. Michelle has a fight in there with another girl, and that's Trisha.
Oh my God!
And she was pleasant, and she had some acting ability.
Mm-hmm. And then we had everybody had an '80s big hairdo. I love this '80s look, this '80s big hair. I loved it.
It's not as bad as that, like the porn girls used to have, like Shauna Grant. She used to have that big hairdo. It looked like she was ready to roller boogie or something. Disco hair, or whatever they call it.
Big disco hair.
Big disco hair. Yeah, now this is the same room that Jay Richardson and his girlfriend were in. This is the same room that Jimmy Williams got sawed up in.
Oh my God.
It's the same set over and over again, just like the tomb.
Were these sets built for this movie, or were they from another movie?
No, they would have been built for this film.
Okay.
Because the studio is usually empty before you come into it.
Okay.
But we may have used existing flats, like a door flat, because usually you go out in a scene dock, which you'll see the scene dock later when they're creeping around outside, and you'll find a flat with a window in it, and you'll find a flat with a door in it, and you put them together, this, and paint them for people who don't understand.
I shot a movie there called Lady Avenger, and I was expecting to do all of the scenes in a black and make them all sort of mysterious and weird and supernatural and kind of strange. And I walked in there, and Sandy Howard had just finished one of his action movies, and there was 5 or 6 sets standing, And suddenly I'm going, oh my God, I can actually do these scenes properly. And I shot on the standing sets because it was only about 2,000 square feet was this stage, if I'm not mistaken.
It was not very big.
Yeah, but there, you can do a lot in it. And I did. I did everything. Because you had a little dressing rooms off to the side. You had a little bit of a backlot. Parking was always a nightmare. And here is Gunnar Hansen. Now, is this the first time he's ever spoken a word on film in any motion picture?
No, he was in The Demon Lover for
So
Don
he actually had
Jackson.
dialogue
He played
in
a
that?
professor, yes.
Oh, okay.
He played a professor in that movie.
Okay.
But yeah, Lucky Brown. I shot John Carradine here so many times. And Cameron Mitchell, Aldo Ray.
Wow.
David Carradine, Lee Van Cleef. Everybody had been in this studio.
Well, didn't other horror films shoot in the studio?
Well,
in the
there
50s
was-
and 60s?
I can't tell you all the different ones that were there. I know Lucky had made his own movie with William Shatner called Whale of a Tale.
Right.
About a killer whale, I think,
Right.
as a pet or something. And I know that was shot there. It's almost impossible because a movie will come in for a day. Like, wasn't there one called Demon Wind or Demon?
Yes, Demon Wind.
And I think that came in for a day.
Right.
And
A lot of Blue movies were shot in here as well, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sure. But you talk about sets. When we did Star Slammer, we had built all these sets. We had taken a supermarket that was empty and made a studio out of it. And
I thought that was the Melrose stage, no?
no, this was someplace else. It was a
really?
grocery store.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
Okay.
we had built this big set, and then somebody came in and they offered us a certain amount of money not to tear it down. They said, we'll tear it down for you and haul it away. They wanted to use it for a Nazareth video, which is what happened.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the band Nazareth came in and shot a rock music video on the sets of Star Slammer.
Nice. How did you like working with Gunnar Hansen?
Gunnar is just a really pleasant guy. He's very unassuming. I mean, a lot of people don't seem to realize that Texas Chainsaw Massacre was almost a college student production. They were made by people who were in school together, and it was a great show and it was great success for everybody. But I mean, Gunnar was kind of, I think, cast in that because he was a big guy and he knew the guys making the film. It wasn't because he has a mean streak.
Right.
It's not because he's a violent person. He's a very pleasant person. He's a poet.
Right.
I mean, he's a poet. I don't know what more you can say about a big bear of a guy like that than that he has a very gentle spirit and he's a very, very nice guy, and we enjoyed working with him a lot. And of course, we all see each other now, sometimes crossing paths at these conventions.
Right.
Which kind of keep people together. Some of these horror conventions are the only times you see Jeff Combs anymore, or Gunnar, or people that we used to know and work with.
Because Gunnar, you had to fly him in, didn't you? He wasn't living in L.A.
No, he was living in Mount Desert Island, Maine.
Wow.
It was a whirlwind for him because there was no time to mess around. You came in, you shot your part Monday, you're back on the plane, and you're on your way.
So 2 days.
Yes, he came in Friday, but I don't think I shot him on Friday. I shot that stuff with Esther and
Okay.
Fox Harris.
Got it.
And then he worked Saturday and Sunday. Well, if you think about it, he's in this scene, and then he's in the scenes at the temple, and that's pretty much it. There's
And
these
then the
scenes of him
little
watching,
cutaways.
which we did. We ganged them all up. We had some fake trees,
Uh-huh.
and then we had a curtain rod that we hung up, and he looked through the curtain rod. It was just kind of kept him alive and throughout the film,
Right.
without having to extend the amount of days and stuff that
Right.
he worked. And I paid him fairly well.
Good.
For his troubles.
It was a coup to get him, Fred. When I found out you had Gunnar Hansen in a chainsaw movie, I go, Jesus, ain't that.
Well, he'd never been even at a horror convention. I brought Eric Caden down on the last Sunday night because Eric was dying to meet him.
Eric Caden is the owner of Hollywood Book and Poster.
Yes, and he's very heavy involved in the convention scene. So Eric came down and told Gunnar that if he would come to a convention, he could make a certain amount of money. And so Eric set it up. And of course, Gunnar's been, making horror movie convention appearances ever since. But at the time that he came to do this, he had no clue that world existed. It wasn't his world. He wasn't a horror movie fanatic. He wasn't interested.
Right.
But
he was interested in making a couple of bucks, and Chainsaw was then coming out on DVD or video, probably.
Well, and somebody's called up and asked you, would you like, and that's what he said. He said, I get a phone call and ask me, would I like to fly to Hollywood and be in a film? Well, why not? Why not, indeed? And that's exactly what happened. Now, here she goes again. She's pulling the chainsaw, and just look at the look on Michelle's face. And this is one of the ones where the blade's really running, because I wanted it to come down in front of Jay's face and the blade to stop, so you could see those teeth.
See, and there's a girl standing next to her with no top on, right by the blade. I don't know what these girls were thinking. But Michelle comes around here, and she's got this incredibly sinister, maniacal, crazy, like right there.
Yeah.
Nobody enjoyed this, I think, more than Michelle.
Nice shot, a little rack focus.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And there was a friend of mine, Lee Langford, was one of the writers with me. Or I say he rewrote me. He was kind enough to rewrite my bad dialogue, but he kept sticking in these David Letterman jokes.
Oh,
As
really?
you'll see, there's all these David Letterman jokes in the movie.
Right.
Nowadays, they wouldn't let you get away with all that because there's all these products and things that they tell you to avoid now. And, they tell you not to mention people or talk about slushies. They're going down to the mini mart.
Yeah, exactly. No, they wanted to
see. There's nothing out that door. It's just black. It's just blackness out there. There's nothing out there.
Oh my God! And could this have been the only time you ever worked with Linnea Quigley?
It is.
Isn't that amazing?
It's the only time. Well, as things went on, as you know, I might as well be candid. Dawn and I split up, and I became involved with Brink Stevens.
Oh, okay.
So here you are, basically joined at the hip with another Scream Queen. It only made sense,
right,
to make movies with Brink,
right,
who did more serious roles. Linnea was great with comedy, but I didn't make that many comedies,
right.
And if I wanted to do a comedy, I had Michelle, who was great in comedy.
Right.
Brink was very good in dramatic type roles, and we made movies like Haunting Fear and Spirits. That was the kind of role that she would excel in.
Right.
You know? And Michelle was good in everything, but she was particularly good in comedy.
Yeah, she was great.
She had a great sense of humor.
Look, I put Linnea, Brink, and Michelle in their first movie together within months of you shooting this film and Sorority Babes, and used them again together on Nightmare Sisters, which was released by Transworld on video at the time, and it was the three together, and it was great. But you did Scream Queen Hot Tub Party after this. Sure.
It would be some time.
Yeah,
It would be a little bit later in our lives. I lived in a completely different house.
Oh, that's right.
Now I was at
Nob
Hill Drive.
Right.
But every one of these girls seemed to have sort of, I don't want to say benefactor, but they had a director that fueled their career. You tended to fuel Linnea's career.
Right.
And, of course, I fueled Brink's.
Right.
And then Michelle just kind of was wherever Michelle wanted to be.
Right.
You know what I mean? And Jim Wynorski, of course, he pushed Monique Gabrielle.
Right.
So most of these girls had somebody who liked working with them and liked building projects around whatever their particular talent was.
Right. Linnea was my muse, and she's a doll and is my muse. We're still, she's still, when she's in LA, she stays at my house. She's now there's going to be a headbutt coming up here. Yes. Okay. Now it looks pretty real.
It is. The sound effect in there is also real. Jay, we still talk about that, but it was a one take. Linnea's never cuter than she was in this film either.
I tell you,
last
she's
close-up,
adorable.
She was just a little doll.
A doll.
Now here we're talking about
This is Melrose.
right where she's got her head in his lap, and her hair is completely frizzed out like she stuck her finger in a light socket. This has to have been maybe a month or so after the film was made, and she came back, and her hair was completely different.
Now there's narration here, correct?
Yes.
Was that written after principal photography, or was that in the script?
No, it was all in the script.
Oh, okay. So this had to be shot at some point. You decided to do it more visually.
Well, we just didn't have a day to shoot a car driving around Hollywood. We kind of knew it would have to be a second unit thing, and I wanted a pink Cadillac. And I remember that one of the things that I had written in here is I said perhaps we'd let our religious freedoms go too far, or maybe our immigration laws were just too lax. And it was just kind of a little bit of me slipping in there. But, the funny thing is, the way the world's turned, I think people might still believe that. I don't know that I was too far off of my time.
I don't think so. Oh, a landline and a tape recorder. Wow. And whose idea was it? Obviously, this is a silly question, but I'll ask it anyways. When you're thinking of Hollywood chainsaw hookers, the last thing you'd think of would be Raymond Chandler, film noir lighting, narration. I mean, he's literally a character from another time. Was that your idea when you wrote the script?
Yes.
Oh wow, that's great.
Because I was into Dashiell Hammett at the time, and I was into Raymond Chandler, and I loved that sort of stuff, and I was just trying to figure out, because there wasn't any way that this movie was going to happen in our universe, David.
Right, exactly.
It had to happen in someone else's universe, like the Marilyn Monroe painting on the wall,
Right.
and it tilts down, and Linnea is in the same exact pose
Right.
as Marilyn is in that famous painting. I don't know if anybody ever notices that, but as it tilts down, it's just a different world. Cops behave differently. Everybody behaves differently. But that's what was different about this. Anybody else, it would have been a really gory bloodbath. Somebody would have been really sadistic. Girls would have pleaded for their lives or crawled on the ground trying to get away.
Right.
You know, it would have been your standard 1987, slasher horror film. But I wasn't interested in that. I'm not interested in watching them. And I'm not that into it.
Right.
So I wanted to make a movie that I could get into, that I could watch, that I would be entertained in making. So it had to have girls with big tits, and it had to have chainsaws. I'm kidding when I say that. I don't really crazy about chainsaws.
And so you shot the movie. It was edited by Skip Malinowski.
Yes.
Who went on to edit Nightmare Sisters for me because you had hired him. So
There
I
you
said,
go.
if it's good enough for me, if it's good enough for Fred, it's good enough for me.
Well, Nightmare Sisters is a classic, David.
Oh, thank you.
That was one of the
Fred.
first films that we had at Retro Media that we really were excited to make that deal and offer that to the public, because to me, you had all three of those girls, and they were doing all the things you want to see them do, and it was just I thought Nightmare Sisters was a great movie.
Thank you. And who was that actress?
You know what her name was? I don't know what the hell her name was.
You worked with her a lot. I think
She was in one film. This is it.
Really?
This
I
is
remember
it.
seeing her. Maybe I.
No.
Oh, that's
no.
a great. See, that's a great.
And then I told her to stick her foot up in the air.
That's great. Now this is right outside Movie Tech Studios. This is on, if I'm not mistaken, this is right on Seward, looking at Willoughby, panning right, so you're looking towards the east. I think, if I'm not mistaken, or am I wrong?
It's in the Movie Tech neighborhood.
Okay.
And of course, all that stuff was literally shot without any lights. All the shots of that car going around the corner and stuff that we have in exposure is amazing. This stuff had Gary's little light kit in it.
Right.
But all the drive-bys and stuff. And I can't remember where we got a pink Cadillac, but it was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool car. And unfortunately, at night you can't really tell it's pink, but it was.
And her hair, you're right. I would have never noticed it, but it's not that big of a deal because to me. But her hair is a little different. I think she's probably shooting Vice Academy at this point. No, or she might have just got back from Sorority Babes. I would think. Why do I remember that?
I don't know, but
I think
one
she
thing's
did.
for sure.
That's a different hairdo.
That's a different hairdo.
That's a different hairdo. So, did Jay Richardson surprise you when you said, "Oh my God, this man can play these characters. He's great to work with. He does it in one take in 5 days." Because he ended up, you must have done 2 or 3 movies with Jay.
Well, you got to remember at the time that I made this, I wasn't trying to get started in the business. I was already well established. I was already used to working with professional actors who could nail it and were great.
Right.
I mean, this is after I'd already worked with maybe Martin Landau and Lee Van Cleef and David Carradine.
Right.
So for Jay to come in and be this good wasn't that surprising. I felt lucky.
Right.
I felt lucky. But that he would be this good was not that wasn't surprising. And of course, the way his career went after he decided to come back as an actor, I mean, his career just took off.
Yeah.
I mean, because Jay could play anything. He could play the President of the United States. He could play a dime store detective. He could play a mob boss, which he has.
Right.
I mean, he could play anything and be convincing in it. He's got that it. Whatever that it is that certain actors have, he's got it. And that's something.
Now that's Movie Tech Studios entrance there.
That's the front. Yes.
That's the front.
That's the front.
That's the gate.
the gate to movie heaven.
Movie Tech Studios is the very.
If you didn't mind the smell of stale beer cans and cigarettes. No, that's the scene, Doc. You can see the sets and stuff all leaned up back there.
Yeah.
And over to the right, you can't see it, but there was a street scene.
I know.
There's these fake fronts of stores and stuff they had built that were so bad, I can't even imagine anyone outside of a porno shooting those fronts and trying to convince anybody that something was going on in there.
Did you rent the Sphinxes or
Those came from
cats?
Party City. They were the same ones that were in the tomb.
Oh, really?
And there was a party store and down on their Cahuenga, and you can rent them. Now this is back in the scene dock area,
Right.
where there's equipment crates. I don't know what that one says. I don't have my glasses on, but
It's yeah, I don't
but
know.
yeah, this is
Right outside the stage.
and we fogged it. I mean, if you can imagine, we went to the trouble of fogging it back there so that the flashlight beam might cut through. You know, for all you wannabe filmmakers out there, if you got a hard focusing flashlight, fog your set.
Right.
You know,
I don't do much fogging anymore, do you?
no, it went out of style.
Yeah.
Hazing.
Hazy, yeah.
Now they have hazers though that you don't have to do what we used to do: burn a smoke cookie. And then if you didn't get the shot, you'd have to burn the cookie all over again.
Right.
Because it would dissipate so quick, like the
Right.
Star Slammer.
Oh, now who is this?
That's Gary Levinson. Gary Levinson, who was the bald zombie in Shockwaves.
That's right.
And I knew him from Florida, and he was involved in this, and he always wanted to be on camera. He thought he was a potential actor, and he appeared, I guess, in a certain amount of stuff. Again, big hulking guy, but faint at the sight of real blood, like a lot of big hulking guys. And
Now this is all built at Movie Tech.
this is a movie tech. These are the walls from a movie called House 2, the second story. It was a sequel to House.
Oh.
And at one point, John Ratzenberger breaks through the wall and he sees an Aztec temple. He says, "What you got here is your basic alternate universe going on." And these are the Aztec temple sets
Oh, wow.
from House 2.
Okay.
And
Was Corey Kaplan the production designer on that movie too?
no,
or
we rented these.
Oh,
you
you
know,
rent-
you'd be
okay.
surprised what you could rent in this town, David.
Everything has a price.
Everything has a price. And we only had a few flats, so we had to take these flats apart and use them to make the temple set.
Oh, my
it was the same walls. And we were looking for a mummy case, and the only mummy case in town was the one from the movie Vamp, and it had Grace Jones's face on the mummy case.
Oh, wow.
And if you look at the mummy case, there's no mistaking that it's Grace Jones.
Oh, amazing.
And it's funny too because Michelle was in Vamp. Michelle
was
Bauer
she?
was in Vamp.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
And she doesn't relish the experience. If you ever see her and talk to her about it, she'll give you an earful.
Okay.
But yeah, these were, like you see, we're not coming around too far on the Jay and them side because there's not enough set
Right.
to really come around. We're having to kind of shoot these people a little bit profile
Right.
because we've just run out of set.
You only have a 180 barely here. There's nothing yet. So
Right.
yeah.
And I noticed there's a scene where we do kind of get the girls head on. And Esther Elise leads Linnea around. And when I saw the 2K scan, you see more picture than you ever did before. And as she goes around the corner, you can see the studio, and there's a fire extinguisher and a bucket sitting there.
Oh, Jesus.
Some of the things I saw in the 2K that you won't see here because you're missing a lot of the picture area, is I saw the slate leaving the shot. We were actually calling action before the slate was out of the shot, and that shows you how short the short ends must have been. Because a 100-foot short end is a minute. It's 90 feet for a minute. So you'd hit that slate and call action just, as fast as you could. And what I noticed in the 2K scan is sometimes down in the corner, you would still see the slate leaving the shot while the actor is beginning to do the role.
That's amazing. That's amazing. No, I mean, I remember when there was times where I was right down to the nub of film, 100-foot short ends, and it was just, which is 1 minute.
Yes.
You have to thread it, and you have to. It's just like, oh, you vague.
It's about enough for a take, and then you have to reload the whole camera.
Exactly.
Now, the other thing about cameras back then is if the mag isn't loaded quite right, or it's something funky with the mag, it makes a noise.
Yeah.
And you can hear the magazine in this scene. You can hear the camera. The camera noise is evident in the soundtrack. I think especially when Gunnar Hansen walks in, you can hear the camera mag.
Really.
And it's usually the fact that the film is scraping the mag a little bit, or it's a little
It's a
offset.
loose load.
Right.
Right.
And a lot of times you get a noisy mag. One mag will be noisier than another, even if they're self-blimped.
Right.
And like in this scene right here, I think I tried to cover it with a little music, but you can hear the magazine.
Yeah. This was probably an Area BL2 or 3 package, correct? I think it probably was.
Probably a 3.
Probably a 3.
Probably a 3.
And this is before we used to use video taps.
There were no
correct?
video monitors. You would simply ask the DP. You'd look at it, and I wouldn't even watch a whole rehearsal. I'd just look through the lens, decide what the lens size was, see that the angle was what I wanted, and you would just stand next to the DP, and you'd say, "How was that?" And so even to this day, I'll say cut, and I'll say the DP's name. And I used to say cut, Gary. And I would say that even if Gary wasn't my DP. Every once in a while, I'll still say that. I can't believe that I still do it. But
Now look at this set.
Well, that's the Aztec temple set again. It's sort of spread out with the 2 cat statues and Grace Jones sitting back there in the background.
This is great. Now, was this the last day of shooting or the?
No, this would have been
first
this
weekend?
would have been the second. because Gunnar was on the first weekend, and we filmed Fox and them on Friday night. I would say that Saturday we filmed the stuff where Jave's tied to the bed and stuff.
Okay.
And then Sunday would have been this sort of stuff.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then Gunnar left, and then we came back the next weekend and continued on in our offices and places like that.
This is hilarious. Now, some of these girls are part of your crew, correct?
Well, no, they. You know what? I want to say that this is what I was told because for legal reasons. Okay. I was informed that these girls were actual girls from the streets of Hollywood that they'd gone out and coerced into coming in for a few bucks, and they hit our rap beer. These three girls wiped out an entire cooler of rap beer. I'm sure with some help from some of Lucky's employees.
Right.
But I'd never seen these girls before or since, and they couldn't even get their shit together. I mean, they were supposed to say either, I think they were supposed to say kill him or give it to him with the saw. Half the girls are saying kill him. The other are saying give it to him. So it comes out as kill it to him. And when you see when they're chanting, it's just none of them. Half of them are saying one thing, half of them are saying something else.
Oy.
It was a hard time to get them to all look in the same direction. I mean, it was what it was.
This is a hilarious scene. Michael Sutty, Dookie Flyswatter is perfect.
I know, but this is one of those. Now his girlfriend at the time, Jill Connor, she was the wardrobe girl, and that is the outfit that Michelle Bauer wore in The Tomb.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the movie, The Tomb, when she's about to sacrifice Susan Stokey, she's wearing that robe that Esther Elise is wearing, right there. And of course, if you're going to put Michelle Bauer in an open front robe,
that's the one.
Open that fucking robe. You know. Now this is where I felt like the movie. I felt like ran out of steam, even for a short film. I felt like we didn't have enough plot. I mean, look how fast you and I have gotten to the finale of this movie. It feels like we just started this commentary. But I felt like it ran out of gas. No pun intended. And we ended up here with Tricia came to me and she said, if you can get some white gas, is what she called it. I think it was kerosene. She said, if you get some white gas, I've got a fire eating kit in my car. And really? I said, no shit. And so I sent the guys out and they got her some kerosene, and she did this whole fire-eating thing, and I was like going, okay, this will help my running time.
Yeah.
Because running time is always a problem on a low-budget film.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're in such a hurry that even a scene that might play twice as long plays half that length because you're making people run in, hit your mark, say your line, because you're running out of film. You don't have time to develop the scene slowly or properly even because you're in such a panic to get those lines on camera. Everyone runs in, hits your mark, say your line. You know, and so the films end up running kind of short.
Yeah, well, because you know, in film school they say one script page is 1 minute of screen time. It's the biggest bunch of bullshit.
Whoever's teaching these film schools are obviously people who have not paid their dues in this business.
That is the biggest lie. One of the biggest lies.
That's bullshit.
It's such bullshit.
That is bullshit.
It's 30 seconds if it's anything, and that's the thing.
Now this is good. Now look at that. See. That's worth the cost of admission alone. Don't tell me she doesn't have a hot set of tits. I mean, and Esther Elise over here, if you watch her,
she's fantastic.
She's like in a trance. The girls are supposed to be in trances, but Esther starts acting funny. She starts doing things over there. I mean, I guess she just didn't like the idea that she had to just stand there. She starts acting funky. She's like weirdly looking around and stuff.
I completely I was totally inspired by this scene for the last sequence in my movie, Ring of Darkness, where I had at Bronson Caves, where I had Adrienne Barbeau as the high priestess of the high priestess of the voodoo cult, and with the boy band Zombies, and it was this scene that inspired me, Fred. So you're always inspiring me, and no matter what you say about running out of steam, my friend, this is a perfect movie. This movie had a premiere at the oldest movie theater on Hollywood Boulevard, the Egyptian Theater, and it was
that's only proper. With the Egyptian chainsaw, or should be called that the Egyptian theater should be
exactly, and it went over like gangbusters. So.
It did, but I saw it at the New Beverly not too long ago as part of the Boobs and Blood Festival, and they had us over, and we showed the 35 print. And I just, it was, I would say like Evil Tunes, that it is a product of the time that it was made in.
Those fucking chainsaws are so heavy, they're about to break her in half. Did you see her walk out of that thing? She's she could...
Well, she's gassed, too. The exhaust was building up inside there.
Oh, no.
And only one of them would run. So only one of those chainsaws is running. You could tell which one it was. We couldn't get the other one to go.
Now, Fred, television like Entertainment Tonight and Evening Channel and all those things thought she was wearing a costume. And
Yes.
this clip is all over broadcast television.
That's right. This has been on all the Current Affair,
Yeah.
Inside Edition, hard copy. They didn't realize that she's just wearing body paint.
Exactly, and so you had nudity basically on broadcast TV, like at the
Yes.
like an early evening. It was unbelievable.
Yes.
Because it's such a it's an amazing. Who did this paint job?
Now, Dawn Wildsmith did this paint job, but it went on and on and on. I mean, you could just see how long it would take. You got to start the movie, and she's in a makeup chair for 5 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like going, well, we're not getting anything done. So Linnea, I think, was married to a makeup artist named Steve Johnson at the time. So he ran down there, and he jumped in with Dawn, and the two of them finished this off. But still, this is a hell of an outfit she's wearing.
Yeah, it's a hell of an outfit.
She's wearing or not wearing. I don't care how you look at it.
Yeah, that's a hell of an outfit.
Well, you know, when you think about it, I mean, for a nothing movie, which is what this is, it has a lot of iconic imagery.
Yeah.
There's a lot of iconic images in this film. And I'm going to tell you right now, anybody who's listening to this has already got the Blu-ray. Encourage your friends, because if this Blu-ray doesn't sell, I'm not doing Evil Tunes. I'm not doing Angel Eyes. I'm not doing Phantom Empire. I'm not doing any more Blu-rays. If I fail in this Blu-ray, David, I'm out of the Blu-ray business.
Oh, no. Yeah, guys,
It'll be my one and only attempt.
Guys, tell your friends. It's most likely going to be a limited edition.
Oh,
so
signed. Don't forget, the first 1,000 units are signed. Signed editions.
This movie has never looked this good, Fred. It is gorgeous. Look at this movie.
No, it actually looks like we spent 50 cents more. You know, people ask me what it cost to make a film like this back then, and this movie had a budget of $50,000
minus your fees.
Well, I didn't have any fees, but
that's what I'm saying. So never say the budget unless you remind people.
I'm talking about the cash I spent, but there was another
Yeah.
10 grand on top of that I paid for the answer print. If you can believe an answer print was $10,000, brother, it was.
Tell them how you got this police car.
Well, this is Jerry Miller driving the police car. There's Jesse. He's in the movie again. My supervisor. He's bad now. He's a cop. Jerry Miller was a retired guy who owned his own police car, and he would rent it to low-budget movies for a very reasonable amount, but you had to put Jerry in the movie. He had his own uniform, and it said Murphy. So he was always Murphy the cop. And you see him in movie after movie after movie because it's guys like me and you, Dave, who couldn't afford those Hollywood production vehicles. You'd pay Jerry, and he'd come out with his cop car, and you'd put Jerry in the movie, and you could have a police car.
And he would wear his cop uniform, too.
Uniform, yes.
It was a turnkey operation.
Right. And it got him out of the house. I think his wife liked that a lot. Look how sharp this is.
It's gorgeous. That's what I'm saying. It's never looked this good. This is beautiful. Now, who came up with the line "Virgin Dance of the Double Chainsaws"? One of the greatest B-movie lines.
Well,
of
I
the
wrote the script, and then I had my friend Langford rewrite me, and so we shared credit on it. I can only imagine I was in the original script.
Okay,
because
good.
I don't think that Lee would have come up with something that dumb.
Okay.
He was the clever one. He was the smart one of the two of us. But I was smart enough to let him come in. That's United Color Lab right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was shot
We were
right
just, well, we put the light on the street, and we're driving up in front, back and forth in front of the studio because there's a light there.
And you had no generator. It was pulling
There was
power.
no permits.
Yeah.
There was no permit on this movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Just take your chances. But
Jill Connor, who the costume designer on this, she did an amazing job. Everybody looks great.
Oh, she did a great job in Star Slammer and The Tomb and some of these other films. And she worked at the LA Public Library. I'm not sure where she is right now.
She did a great job on this. I love these girls. They're hilarious.
Yeah. All I remember is that they killed my beer and they were supposed to be real hookers.
We don't do rap beer anymore. Remember how we used to do rap beer?
Well, now they wanted you to be responsible if some guy wrecks his car on his way home. So
Yeah, exactly.
We say we don't do that shit
Now this
anymore.
is incredible. This scene, all the Scott Wrestler
We have the
backlight.
girls running back and forth.
How'd you make it have so much smoke coming out of it?
That's just what they did. There's a backlight you can see up behind the set.
So you didn't put anything in the oil or
No,
anything?
there's
or
a
the gas?
there's a backlight coming over the top of the mummy case. You can see right there when the blades are up, and it's just simply lighting up the exhaust. You wouldn't see the exhaust if it wasn't for that backlight.
I got you.
Like right there.
I thought you might have put some extra schmutz in
Nope.
the.
No, I wouldn't
Wow.
mess with that. These are rentals. But see,
Okay.
there's that blue black light coming off of the Grace Jones's head back there. This is
Oh my
great.
God, that's great.
This was a messy film. The cleanup was incredible.
Unbelievable.
You know, you got a topless chick with body paint on and a chainsaw, and she's got a real saw right there.
And
She's pretty tired right now.
Yeah.
She's pretty tired. You can see when she goes to put it down right there. It's like, oh my fucking back. And then she got to run over here and start acting some more.
She's 100 pounds, and that chainsaw must have been at least 50.
But that's kind of what this was all about.
Exactly.
You know? And amazingly enough, this movie got so much attention. There's a comic book. There's a soundtrack album. I've been to Toronto. I've been to Ontario. I've been to London, Italy. This movie has been shown around the world, and it's hard because I've done real films. I've made good films, and of course, anytime somebody wants to talk to you about this, the first thing they want to bring up is this movie.
Of course.
And my agents at APA, which was one of the top 5 agencies in Los Angeles, that's what they had on the wall of their office. They had a poster of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers.
Oh my God.
I know. Well, it was right place, right time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was that time when the video market was taking off and we could make films we wanted to make them our way and we could make a profit.
Right.
And it was the place to be. And a lot of times, you go out and you make a film like this on your own with no money and no time and no effort, but you do it so that you can be in charge, so that you're not taking orders from somebody. And I would do these every once in a while just so I could have final cut.
Right.
So I could make the movie I wanted, on my own terms. And then tomorrow I'll go back to work. I'll make Commando Squad.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I'll do Commando. I'll do Inner Sanctum tomorrow. But today I'm going to make a movie my way, the way I want to do it, and about the subject matter I want.
And you're going to own it.
And I'll either lose my shirt or I'll make a profit, but I'll have done it, and I'll only blame myself.
Right.
So these things are almost like vacations from the real jobs that we were doing at the time and working for people who had no creativity and were just forcing your hand at every turn.
Lots of the guys we were working for at this time English wasn't their first language, and they didn't have a sense of humor. So they would never even understand this movie. So that's, you make it on your own. It's your movie.
Not funny.
Not funny. I don't understand why the chainsaws are fun. It's just not funny. I don't get it.
And you would see that none of these films that we made while we were working for Transworld were ever released by Transworld. They were never interested in any of these films I made.
That's a gorgeous shot. Is that Gary?
That's a Gary Graver shot.
That's a great shot. Yeah. That's a great shot. Well, look, it's also, you and I grew up in the drive-ins watching crazy movies from friends, Ross Hagen and people like that, and to go out in 5 days make a movie called The Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, you're right, it's a vacation. It's why we got in this business to begin with. We love these kind of movies, and we have great time watching them as a kid. And
well, what's really wonderful too is that it seems like a lot of other people loved this film as much as we did, and because I'm certainly pirated enough, and there's enough T-shirts out there and fake posters and pill boxes and you name it, people ripping off the artwork for this.
And why is it back in those days, maybe you didn't have this experience, but no matter what kind of company I was interviewing to direct a movie for, and it was very multi-millionaires, and they'd always go, "So Dave, what were the girls like on those movies?" That's all they wanted to know.
I know. I think people think that it's an open party on these films as opposed to like really super hard labor.
Exactly.
And God help you if you ever have a girlfriend who's an actress or something. That just complicates your life.
Exactly.
Because now you have to consider them every time you go to make a movie, and if they don't get the part they want, your life at home is just going down the toilet.
Is that movie ever going to happen, Student Chainsaw Nurses, Fred?
Not in my lifetime.
Okay. Well, it's what an amazing, what is this, a 30-year?
Now, see, Dawn was billed over Michelle Bauer in this because Dawn was better known. She was in Surf Nazis. Mm-hmm. She'd been in the villain in Cyclone and
Michelle was credited as Michelle McClellan.
That was a time when her ex-husband, Mr. Bauer, was threatening her with, I guess, some kind of legal action or something if she didn't stop using his last name. Okay. And so she tried to switch Susie Wilson, that's who played Sally. There you go.
Okay.
So she tried to switch over, but it just didn't stick. The fans just wouldn't buy it. Mm-hmm. And so she basically, became Michelle Bauer forever.
Your second camera assistant, Amy Vincent, is now one of the top DPs in the movies now. She does very, very big budget films. That's the same crew I had on Sorority Babes, so the same camera department. Harry had David Essex, who's no longer with us, was the gaffer on Creepazoids. Ted Tooney is still around.
Yeah, he works on Lost or whatever those shows in Hawaii. And Corey Kaplan, this is a major art designer now. You'll see her as a multiple award winner.
Absolutely.
So these are the people. These are the people who made the film. And there's a certain amount of gate weave going on in there too. But you know what? You can't have everything.
Well, at least
folks.
you know it's shot on film. It still has that feel of the '80s and back when.
Not only that, but I mean, it's taken years before I was convinced to actually take that negative out of the box and put it back up and do a transfer of it. And I think it really looks gorgeous.
It does.
I think it really looks gorgeous for what it is, and as cheap and as nothing as it was. It's probably the best it may ever look until Quentin Tarantino wants to do a special edition.
Brett Mixon, who did the amazing title sequence, Joy Rencher, negative cutter extraordinaire, who cut negative on most of my movies.
Yes, she was the negative cutter to the low budget community.
She was. So Fred, what a great time today. Please go to retromediatv.com and take a look at all the movies you can download, and please go to retromedia.org to look at all the new releases, and hopefully, if you guys get out there and support this Blu-ray, there'll be more. This is Dave DeCoteau.
And it's Fred Ray.
And you can find me at rabbithheart.tv and rabbithheart.com. And Don Jackson and Herb Strock, and I see movie it just brings me right back to the 80s. And Steve Johnson, everybody.
A&P Industrial Rentals, that's the one you want to remember.
Because that's what had the chainsaw.
That's who had the chainsaw.
I wonder if they know that.
I don't think so.
Anyways.
I hope not. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.